Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Nothing much. Episode one, huh?
Episode one. I think we just got to go right blind into it.
Right blind into it.
Yes, very blind.
What do you want to use for a blindfold? What's your blindfold of choice?
Ooh, I wasn't quite that prepared yet. This is our first podcast. You got to take it easy on me, man.
I wasn't intending to do this blind, so you brought it up.
Anyways, welcome to our first podcast. This is super exciting. Trevor and I have been putting this together for some time, so we're excited to deliver it to you. And yeah, man, what you got to say?
Yeah, no, this is exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. I think we had a good idea for our first episode. We wanted to talk about you and I's background story, where we grew up, and kind of how we ended up in where we are today.
100%. I think that's a good way to kick it off for sure. If you want to start about maybe where we're both from.
It would be an honor. So, Dani and I are both from a small town, northern Massachusetts, like 30, 45 minutes north of Boston. It's a pretty homogenous setting. And to kind of paint the picture for you, I'd think white picket fences, all the lawns are really green and crisp grass, a small brick downtown. There's no fast food joints there. It's all like a small local spot. Quite a bit of farmland. That was a stereotype that was there. As a lot of people owned horses. And yeah, I think there wasn't a population much larger than 10,000 people total in that town. So this is where we both grew up, and it was a place where everyone sort of shared the same perspective. Those perspectives never really got challenged there because everyone was sharing that same idea, and you kind of kept that up until you got pushed out into the real world, or I should just say different, more diverse environments when you left for college, which was, yeah, again, one of those places where it was kind of the expectation of, you go to college, you go to start a family afterwards, yada yada, American dream.
Yeah, no, exactly. That is very well put. I guess, yeah, just imagine your average cookie cutter kind of town, so to speak, as well as debatably there might have been more horses than people in the town that we grew up in. So I don't know, you guys look that up and let us know. But but yeah, so as Trevor said, that is where we did most of our growing up, middle school, high school, a little bit of elementary as well. For me, I actually came into that a little later. I was adopted, so I came to that town when I was 9 years old. So growing up in the North Shore of Massachusetts and about 45 minutes north of Boston, that was a unique experience, and that was kind of where everything started in terms of getting to know each other and day to day just hanging out, and yeah, just being average, teenagers and all the above. So that's
Yeah.
about where we kind of started off at, I would say.
Yeah, I think we met through sports or something of that sort because we were
Exactly.
still at different elementary schools or middle schools.
Yep.
Um, I had a very different experience in childhood than you did, and I'll kind of, I guess, start with
For
my
sure.
average white American experience there compared to your very different experience.
For sure.
Yeah, so right, I was just another person in the herd there, another member of the crowd, so to speak, and I grew up with a more closed-minded perspective because of that. Kind of, as I touched upon earlier, I shared the common perspective in that town, and that never got challenged. It became very deep-rooted and really a part of my identity because how long that became unchallenged. So I firmly held my respective beliefs, and I subsequently became quite insensitive because of that. I think I never really had to see any effect for words that we spoke. So people would make pretty insensitive jokes, and I was one of them for sure. And with that said, there was no consequences because there was no one else there. There's no other aspect of I'd say the real world, the larger picture of the United States, and as the world as a whole there. So you never gonna got to see the effect of what we were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you'd said before as well, I think part of growing up in such a homogenized setting is that you don't really question anything, and everything is somewhat of the same flow. So there's no really getting out of the flow or anything like that. So when jokes would be, flying or some words would be said, a lot of it seems very innocuous in that, people would think, well, this is not really hurting nobody or anything like that. But that was just in terms of the setting that they were in. There was no really understanding of depiction of racial dynamics or any sort of what, a diverse climate would look like, and kind of the way you would conduct yourself in that manner or anything. So similarly to that, there were no challenging questions or anything that were brought up. I think we started, having those tougher conversations more so in our later years, more so probably even after, going to college and then coming back, was, I think, the more formative years to really have these tougher questions about the importance of, racial issues, social justice, politics, what all that looks like, and especially bring it to an element of what did it look like in the community where we were brought up in, where for, various individuals, it wasn't really concern of topic necessarily. And I wouldn't say it wasn't a concern of topic because people didn't want to embark on it just from their upbringing or anything. It just wasn't anything that
Yeah.
seemed important to tackle. And also the racial climate of the community we grew up in, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity to actually be like, you know what, let me see perspective from so and so side or anything like that. So I think that was kind of when those bigger questions got brought up, and I'm glad they got brought up because it's part of why we're here today.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, to tie this into how we are where we are today, the seeds got planted for me really early because of my family's involvement with the Rotary Youth Exchange program. I was really lucky to be a part of that program, my family to be a part of that. So we regularly hosted exchange students. My sister did a year abroad in India. And I myself did a year abroad in Johannesburg, South Africa. And so I got exposed to a lot of different people from a lot of different places and kind of planted the idea in my head of I got their perspectives on the United States, and they all saw it as this sort of this beacon of light where people from all walks of life could come to succeed and do so together with different respective views and ideas. And those were all welcomed and they were all cherished and encouraged for people to speak out and have their different ideas. And so that was the idea I had of the United States growing up. And that seed got planted. I came back to where we grew up, and it kind of faded away for a bit because like I went from having those conversations to seeing different things to coming back, and then everything's back to normal. No one else really cares because that's just like you said, it's not something that's getting brought to the table. So why would they really care? It's not something they talk about everyday life or that's of a concern for them. And so it kind of just faded away. So I took like a bunch of steps back and then kind of took enough steps. Excuse me, took enough a few steps forward and then took enough steps back in order to fall back into place where I was that whole time within that town. And that didn't really get changed until the murder of George Floyd. And that's where you and I started to have these much more tougher conversations that would push me out of that.
Yeah, totally. And I think a little even before the George Floyd happening as well too, it's speaking to the aspect of how privileged I think the community we grew up in uh, continues to be to this day, where in that aspect of privilege, you're not really seeking out a lot of, well, everything is just, feeling safe. You're not, like we said before, challenge or anything. Your safety is ensured, your education. So there's no really bouncing outside the curriculum or anything. So when you had those experiences going to Johannesburg and experiencing life outside of the suburban community that we grew up in, and going to a place like Johannesburg, which is nothing like the community that we had grown up in, and that probably really helped, challenge and also put these the questions in your subconscious that weren't quite pulled out yet because you were then re-immersed into the community again, where, nothing's really challenged or questioned. And then, like you had said, when it came to that turn of us going to college and having our different experiences, real quick before we get to, I think, that critical tipping point, which was the George Floyd murder, that really helped us engage and even overall start this company together. What was your VT experience like? And I'll share a little bit of my college experience too, and how that helped to be a pivotal part of our understanding of asking these big questions
Yeah,
and
sure.
uncomfortable questions too. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I was sort of just transplanted to a different homogenized setting.
Hmm.
VT has a pretty diverse student body, but um, the respective program I was in, it was the same setting I was in. A lot of more closed-minded views, and those views were kind of maintained within the echo chamber of that community that I was a part of. So it continued to be the same viewpoints. And so when you came to me and were bringing up the topics of George Floyd's murder,
Mhm.
it was still like a completely new conversation that I was not used to at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, George Floyd's murder was definitely a critical juncture. I think if you wanted to do the work to end up bringing change to the way you think or challenge the perspectives that you'd grown up with, you could go ahead and do that work. And I like to think more people went ahead and asked those questions that they hadn't asked before. And then there were a lot on the other side too, where they were very defensive and didn't want to ask those questions, and totally kind of separated themselves away from it, and it even almost broke relationships off. And I'm laughing because it for us it was kind of in that episode of where, oh, well, is he like even my friend? Is he even understanding? And then from the other side, it was like, well, am I a bad friend or is he calling me a racist? It wasn't anything of that. It was just let's have talks and let's connect on a different side than the trajectory we'd always had been going in the community that we were brought up in, which is you really don't have to ask those tougher questions to be challenged to grow. So kind of what was that relationship like when it was on the brink of yeah, you go your way and I'm gonna go on mine and peace out.
I want to touch upon one thing you said quickly,
Yeah,
where it is these are horrible events that we're talking about. George Floyd's
of
murder.
course.
There's
Yeah.
horrible things going on right now in the world.
Yeah.
The one positive aspect I've never really thought of before you just brought up is it actually forces a lot of people that might not have thought about it otherwise to become educated and to support really good causes.
Yeah,
So it's like a thin veil that gets lifted, and then people can't help themselves but see what's actually going on,
for
which
sure.
I think is a beautiful aspect of terrible occurrences like this. So, yeah, your original question again. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we were talking about I was saying that during the event of the George
Yeah,
Floyd murder, there was kind of two sides that people took.
yeah,
I like to think more people took on the initiative of, hey, let me learn more about
hmm
why this came about, and
yeah,
what the outcry of these marginalized communities might be or something. And then others were like, you know what, get that away from me,
yeah,
and distancing themselves, and how dare so and so whatever
yeah,
challenge me with that thought or anything. And for us it was that thing of like, for me, like, I'm taking it from a different
yeah,
perspective. And then when we're communicating, I think it was almost breaking this friendship that we'd had, because it was like,
yeah,
I was challenging you with these questions of like, hey man, like jokes that had been flown around before. I mean, they're not funny. They actually do hurt and they have significant impact, and even at a larger implication and everything. And then, yeah, like
yeah.
what was that kind of
Yeah.
initial shock, I guess?
Sure, yeah. So since those views had just remained untouched for so long in their place, they kind of binded with your DNA. So when someone comes and brings their perspective that's very opposing to whatever my perspective was then, it feels like someone's challenging who you are as a person because it's so deeply bonded with you. So that's kind of what it felt like, and it's an unfortunate aspect of that viewpoint that I had was it was kind of it belittled the size and the severity of what was going on at the time. So when you initially brought it to me, it was like police violence happens, dude. Like it's not a racial thing. Like it was just an unfortunate like misunderstanding or something like that sort. Which again, it just obviously was not the truth. But that was the initial reaction, where it's like this is something being put on a pedestal that doesn't possibly deserve to be. So it feels kind of bad, horrible saying that right now,
Yeah.
but that's what it seemed like at that moment. Yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, and at a larger point, it was such at a stage that really couldn't be ignored anymore or anything. So to your point earlier as well, when major things like this happen, two things can happen again, right? Where you can totally distance yourself away from it, or you can take on that challenge of sitting with the discomfort and trying to understand and everything. And for us, we've done a little bit of both of that, and that's what kind of really that was the genesis of trying to start this company, which is the aspect of trying to uh, fight for unity in moments of when the harder questions do come up, be it, politics or whatever. Um, when there's such an initial reaction to be divided, how can we look to actually come together and take these questions head on in a way that actually is going to be more effective in terms of us dealing with these things to actually help each other out and put human interest first and not political interest, so to speak, would
Yeah,
you say?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's such an important thing that has allowed peace and prosperity and equality, equity to win throughout history. I love, Mandela so close to my heart. He came out of prison and he could have completely pushed all the white people out of South Africa, initiated that civil war and ended it and won. And he decided not to. He decided that no, everyone here, white, black, um, Indian, what have you, is South African,
Yeah.
and much so in the United States. We have 50 million immigrants that live in this country, almost 50 million now. Minority people are going to outnumber Caucasians in this country by 2050 with the current projection. And so everyone's American. Everyone here is American. It doesn't matter where you're from. And that was all the idea. That seed that was planted started to sprout in college when I kept seeing all these companies that were like America, 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 and it was just red, white, and blue, more traditional, almost jingoistic perspective. And it's like, well, I remember all these exchange students saying that they're Americans too, and they're from
Yeah.
Finland, they're from Colombia, they're from Japan. They have all these different beautiful perspectives. It's like, where's that America? Where's that
Hmm.
company that's celebrating that? And so, yeah, I brought that idea up to you, and then we grew it. We kept growing it, and here we are talking in
Exactly.
front of microphones.
Yeah, yeah. Such a weird feeling, but we're getting used to
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think to try and fight for that beautiful aspect of what it means to be American is unique, right? To help change the narrative of where it has been. I think a lot of people that um are here that sometimes are within the marginalized aspect of community and everything don't feel necessarily as, you know, excited or whatever to be like, yeah, I'm part of America or anything like that when they've come maybe from another, where their roots or story of origin comes from another place, because, it sometimes can get covered over by other dominant forces or politics or whatever. And so to have this beautiful aspect of that, no matter where you are from, you are part of what makes this place unique. And one of our greatest assets is the fact that we are a diverse group of people and a diverse nation, diverse cultures, diverse interests, diverse things. That's what helps to make this a uniting force that is really meant to be reckoned with and everything. And such a powerhouse, because it's when we realize those things, right? And the different things we bring to the table, the different elements of contribution, right? And so it's this idea of trying to celebrate that. And I loved when you brought up the idea. You were like, what would it look like to celebrate each other's culture, to celebrate each other's differences, nationalities and whatnot, and to put that on such a awesome stage that can be recognized, because you attach the name America at the end of whatever we've got it, right? Brazilian American, Ethiopian American, Haitian American, whatever it is. And that's what's so unique about this place, and why I think a lot of people sometimes flee wherever they are to seek asylum here and to hope for that future of where their kids can grow up with a great education, or they can, imagine a better place for their generation to come, a lot better than maybe what they had growing up and everything too.
yeah, yeah. Extremely well put. Um, I we got a minute left.
Oh, what's that?
We got one
Uh,
minute left.
okay.
So we'll just wrap it up then.
Rabbit hour here.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Very well said. And yeah, thank you everyone for bearing with us during this first episode. It's gonna be a little shaky the first few while we get our feet wet for the first time. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining, and we hope to hear from you and hope that you'll join us for our second episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to make this as much of a conversation as possible. It's not us talking at you, but we want you to join in and give us feedback too. You know, we'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Dani.
Of course.
Peace.